Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Today we are back with another Dokkan Battle video, and a very exciting Dokkan Battle video at that. Today we're going to be counting down the top 5 worst essays and animations of 2020. We are of course going to be doing a best of video a little bit later this week too. Very excited about this. I've wanted to do these type of videos with these animation countdowns for a little while now, and I don't know why I never got to it, but we're here now and we're going to make an annual thing, so look forward to that as well. Before we get started though, we have to lay out some ground rules about how this is going to work. Hold it! And before we lay out some groundwork on how this is going to work, I want to give a very special shout out to Giad, DBZ World, and DBZ Monkey. All three of them let me use their footage for background in this video, essays in this video, essay comparisons for this video. So thank you so much to all three of them. All three of their channels will be linked in the description below, as well as the videos that I use from all of them will be in the credits section in the description below. Thank you guys so much for letting me use your footage for this video. Without you, this would have been way more difficult. So thank you so much for letting me use your videos. Now, on to the rules. 1. We're only going to be taking a look today at Dokkan Fest LR, and unfeatured LR animations. I feel that it is unfair to compare these to free-to-play units and other units in the game, because some essays of non-big boy units look really good and some look like this. Yikes. So we're only going to be taking a look at those type of units today. As well, we are also going to be covering all types of animations in these videos: essays, unit super attacks, active skills, and transformations. To be honest with you, I could make like 4 different videos for best and worst animations, you know, active skills, transformations, that sort of stuff. But I'm not going to do that because A, that is a ton to do right before the end of the year, and B, it feels kind of pointless because some of them I could just kind of talk about in tandem with what I really think about them in this video. So we're going to kind of combine all the animations into this video. Another thing to note is that every single card gets 1 slot on this list. So if I talk about, you know, 1 card in the, you know, 2nd slot, then another one of their animations can't be in the 5th slot or something like that in terms of, you know, the top tier list. Because A, I can just kind of talk about what I don't like about the animations overall with each card in their specific spot in the list. And B, I feel like that's kind of, I don't know, a little bit silly because then it doesn't vary it up as much. So that's how we're going to do that. As well, we are only going to be taking a look at cards from the year 2020, and that is on the JP version of the game, by the way. It would be way too complicated to try and factor in, you know, how we got, oh, well, technically, you know, before the anniversary, you know, there was these essays, and I guess theoretically that is really just Majin Vegeta and Super Saiyan 2 Goku, but for the sake of things, we're literally going to do 2020 only and JP because, you know, it just kind of makes more sense since that's where they're released first. That's the time frame of when they were developed, right? Anyhow, besides that, I did want to also preface this video with 2 things. For one, this is just my opinion, right? All of the things that you're going to hear in this video, what I think is good, what I think is bad. And keep in mind, my perspective is a lot different than probably, you know, a casual player or a very average player, because obviously I'm taking a look at assets all the time. I'm like hyper analyzing essays and being like, okay, this is how this asset works, and this is how this works, and oh, this is just a PNG, and oh, this is multiple pieces. So keep in mind, this is all just my opinion and all from, you know, my brain gears. The other thing that I wanted to mention as well is that I do genuinely think with our Dokkan Fest LRs and normal LRs, every single animation that we got in 2020 is good. If not great, if not fantastic, like we'll see later in the week. I don't think that there was a single bad animation. Let me put it to you this way. The thing with this video is that even though it is the worst animations, right, it's kind of like ranking the worst of your favorite things, right? It's not like you don't like them, it's just that you think that they're the worst out of the group, right? Dokkan's essays have skyrocketed in quality this year alone, even just going from like Super Saiyan 3 Goku and Majin Vegeta from the first Dokkan Fest, right? Like at the end of 2019 or at the beginning of 2020, whatever that was, all the way till now. With even some of the more basic characters that we get, the minute details of the movement, all that kind of stuff is really, really good. So I just want you to, you know, make sure that you understand as well, none of these essays, A, I dislike, and B, think that they're necessarily bad. I just think that they are the worst out of the bunch that we got this year. The other thing I wanted to add is that for these essays, I do use the original animations that the essays are based off of as a comparison for the essays. I don't want that to come off as the fact that I'm frustrated that the essays aren't animation accurate. I want that to come off more so in the way of Dokkan could use what the original animations did so good to make their own animations better and use the originals to get ideas of how to make the essays even better. Now, with all that being said, let's get on with it. Coming in at number 5, we have LR Tech Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. Now, I know what you're probably thinking to yourself. What? Gohan, bro? That is insane. His animations are fantastic. And you would be right. Like I said, this was actually a really hard list to make. And honestly, this one is just a little bit more disappointing than anything. And especially since it's here at number 5, it is almost just nitpicks that I have with this essay more than anything. To be honest, the animations that I'm focusing on here are a little bit more of the transformation, but more so the 18-key super attack. Both look really good, but I do feel like that the transformation and certain parts of the 18-key super attack just don't really feel dynamic. They feel too stiff in their animation. You know, when Gohan is powering up in the transformation, when he's walking forward in the 18-key, that type of stuff. As well, comparing it to the original animation, there are parts of the original movie where the animation is a little bit more dynamic in terms of the angles. When we're taking a look at Gohan's transformation, it does almost like a 180 around his body as he's powering up. And in Dokkan, unfortunately, it was just kind of taking a little bit of a side angle at him as well. In the beginning part where he's walking, it just looks a little bit more coherent in the movie, even though Gohan's movement with his face is still a little bit odd. And honestly, the reason why the 18 key is at this spot mainly is because of the ending. Don't get me wrong, I like how the ending of the animation looks, but I think the biggest problem with it is that it just looks too awkward with there being so much white space in the background. It looks very empty. Like, it looks kind of odd, right? And the thing is, in the original movie, they had more of Bojack showing in the background than they do the enemy sprite in Dokkan. So the white space around the characters doesn't look as awkward in the movie because A, the rocks are a little bit bigger, you know, compared, and Gohan is up close and personal with the camera, and so is Bojack literally right behind him. But we get a farther view way in Dokkan, and it just kind of leaves this animation looking a little bit empty. I wish that they would have literally just zoomed in on Gohan, and then they could have just done a silhouette in the background to make it a little bit closer to the original. But, like I said, overall, I really, really like this animation, and it definitely isn't anything more than these small little nitpicks and changes that I would love for them to make that lands it here at number 5. Coming in at number 4, we have Tech Transforming Janemba's active skill. Now, the rest of Janemba's overall animations are pretty good. There are little parts of them that are kind of choppy compared to the really fluid movement that we get with a lot of the essays nowadays. But I think that what frustrated me the most about this was specifically the active skill. The active skill for Janemba feels a little bit too stiff. And especially compared to the original animation, it kind of left me wanting a little bit more. In the part where all of Janemba's cells are reforming together to make Super Janemba, in the part specifically where they turn from yellow to red, they don't move in like they do in the original animation, and I know for a fact that Dokkan can do something like that, because they have 100% done it before in essays more recently. The rest of it looks alright, in my opinion. It's definitely not too bad, but the one thing that frustrates me the most about this is the fact that they didn't go for a little bit more of a dynamic animation here. The part where it just zooms out on Janemba smiling after he fully reforms, obviously in the original it kind of has him looking at his hand, and I feel like they could have done something like that in Dokkan rather than just having it zoom out with Janemba just kind of standing there, and it kind of leaves Janemba looking very stiff in terms of like his body is so static, and then his facial expression changing with no movement just feels really unnatural. So I think if they added in that little bit of extra animation there, it would have made him feel a little bit more alive. The screen, though, I think is pretty good, to be honest with you. I love the way that they cut from the close-up angle to the faraway angle. It looks good, and even though it is a different angle from the original, I don't think that that part is necessarily lackluster. I almost kind of like the angle that Dokkan has a little bit more, funny enough. But again, like I said, these ones at the bottoms here are a little bit more nitpicks than anything. I just think that it's kind of frustrating that they could have made this so much more fluid, but they kind of made it a little bit static. It almost makes me think that they were saving up all of their resources for the 6th anniversary LRs when they were working on these, since obviously they're what's going to be coming next after Janemba. But obviously that's just kind of a theory, though it would make sense if that is the case. Coming in at number 3, we have the Dokkan Fest STR Bojack. Now, this guy might not surprise some of you, considering I know a lot of people seem to be kind of mixed about this guy's essays. Bojack has some really great stuff. He has a lot of small movement, which is a testament to how far Dokkan has come, even in sections of the essay where there's not that much movement happening. But overall, it just feels not that, I don't want to say interesting, but it just doesn't feel as impactful as it could be. Some of the scenes just have some weird cuts and so on and so forth. But for me, personally, the part that I dislike the most about Bojack's essay is actually the transformation section. I guess I should say animations rather than essay, right? The transformation is pretty lame, all things considered. It is literally just Bojack's face, right? He gives a little smirk, and then he does the Dokkan pose after giving a quick arm flare and a power-up and a ki blast. Really? That's it? When I saw that the first time, I was like, that was actually my reaction. I was just kind of baffled because I remember it looking really, really good in the movie, and going back and doing a little bit of a comparison between it, it is kind of disappointing to see what they went with. Obviously, in the beginning, we have Bojack as a close-up, and the angle in the movie is a little bit more interesting than just the close-up angle that we get in Dokkan. Moving on to the clothes ripping, right? The really cool part about that is that Bojack is almost transforming as he's giving Vegeta the beatdown. So it's so unfortunate to kind of see it relegated to this, where it's literally just show arm, kaboom, show arm, kaboom, when they could have done something a lot cooler. The one thing that I will kind of give Dokkan here is that they have to take some liberties in terms of how their mindset is for these attacks, right? Basically, the way that I can explain this the easiest is that when it comes to transformation specifically, right, it's not an attack in Dokkan, whereas in, of course, the source material, and like in this case, Bojack, it literally is an attack. So, I think Dokkan, with the way that they format their essays, it just kind of doesn't work for them to have a transformation animation be an attack, because the animation isn't actually attacking the enemy character. The way that they are comfortable in doing their animations is that only if the animation is an attack, they'll have it, you know, well, be an attack in the animation. I think a good comparison to this is some of Legend's green cards. Specifically, a more recent example is the Green Jiren. Green Jiren's green card grabs the opponent and then gives them a blast, right? But it doesn't do any damage, and it's literally just for buffs. I feel like Dokkan could do a very similar thing, but I think that the way that they kind of think about animations and the way that they put them out into the way that they think that it should work in the game kind of allows that to not be the case, having some more, you know, attack-based transformations, which was really unfortunate to see because it's a very cool scene in the movie. And then the end part of the animation is also just kind of lame, to be honest. We have a nice dynamic angle with Bojack at kind of a corner, and then we have the smoke that flares up around Bojack before his ki explodes along with the rest of the shirt that is remaining on his body after his sleeves got ripped off. And it looks really, really cool in the movie. I love the way that they do it because it makes the simple, what people like to refer to as the Dokkan pose, where a character just kind of has their arms to the side, you know, powering up, look a lot more dynamic and really, really cool. They didn't even really capture Bojack's weird, like, green circle things that's just kind of supposed to be ki emanating out of him. It's literally just an aura that's flaring up around him. So, kind of unfortunate to see with the boy Bojack. Again, it's definitely not the worst animation. It's still good, and there's still a lot of small moving parts. Like in old Dokkan, that Bojack at the end would have just been one PNG, but you can see that there's small parts moving. You can see that his belt is moving, his hair is moving a little bit, so on and so forth. So I just feel like that they could have made this a lot more dynamic in terms of angles and the way that they went about it. It will be very cool to see if Dokkan ever does do some kinds of things in terms of attacking transformations, you know, almost reminiscent of how Bojack did in the movie, but only time will tell. Moving on to number 2, we have Tech LR Jiren. Now, I think that this doesn't really come as a surprise to anybody that this man is on the list. I remember a very unanimous when this guy was initially shown off. People were really not impressed with this man's animations. They're just not that interesting to look at, and it's really unfortunate because the card itself is really, really good. This guy is absolutely disgusting. But he's just kind of lame in terms of super attacks. There are some good shots in here, and like I've said for a bunch of these essays now, there is a lot of small moving parts that look really, really good from a technical level, right? Before, some of these parts, like bits of Jiren's ripped pants moving and, you know, different pieces of his muscle moving in different sections probably wouldn't have happened a little while ago. But even so, though I would consider all of these animations pretty lame, I still think that it's awesome to see that even with more basic stuff like this, they're still giving it a little bit of movement. His transformation is probably where the least of that happens, but I literally can't even give them the F on that transformation because the end scene with Jiren's ki that's on fire looks so good. For me, it's going to have to be the 18 key for sure. Obviously, the 18 key super attack of a unit is supposed to be the big flashy attack that just makes you go, wow, that looks incredible. But unfortunately, it really doesn't have that effect on me. My favorite part, though, definitely the KO screen, all things considered. It is basically like the transfer, or the active skill animation, just kind of with a little bit of a different look to it. But the overall animation is just not that interesting to look at. I think the best way to describe it would just be, well, lame. And unfortunately, I can't really blame them, considering the fact that the original source material animations for these were kind of not super dynamic. Personally, I think that they could have just done two things differently. If they were going to take from these scenes, they definitely could have gave it a little bit more animation to kind of give it that flair. Like I said, there is still some good stuff in there, but in the actual anime, there's a lot more fluid movement. And I know that it kind of sounds like a lot to ask for them to, you know, like make it anime quality, but we've seen with some of the essays this year that they can 100% get the quality, in some cases almost look even better than the actual animation. It's insane. But if they weren't going to go that route, then I definitely think that they should have maybe just chose some other scenes to take for this guy. Maybe their idea was to make this guy's essays a little bit more lame, so then that way if they ever did come out with another full power Jiren, or we got a base form Jiren to a transforming full power Jiren, then they could kind of save some of the bigger attacks for that. But overall, I am just not really a fan of this one. And coming in at number 1, we have LR Rosé's untransformed 12 key super. That's right, this super attack is so, I don't even know if I want to say bad, because I don't necessarily think that it's awful, but it is really lame. It is so lame. This is just literally like a couple of PNGs with a little bit of key blast effects, zooming around, and one section of movement. It's just not interesting to look at. This super is so disappointing for me, because obviously LR Rosé is such a cool unit, and people have wanted an LR Rosé Goku Black, and obviously the 5th anniversary delivered, but it was just such a shame seeing this level of quality, especially having Gogeta be the unit that released before this guy. In terms of just everything, with basically all of Gogeta's animations, it was astounding. A very good step in the right direction for Dokkan Battle, and a very good telling of what the future held for the rest of this year. And then to see them absolutely decimate that with this essay was just so unfortunate. Compared to even the rest of his animations, it's just really lame and uninteresting to look at. Even though the PNGs by themselves are alright and look pretty good, this is supposed to be an animation, not a slideshow. It's just really lame is the best way to describe it. Even the explosion at the end just does not have a lot of impact. It's just kind of like them trying to mimic impact, and it just doesn't work. It just really doesn't work. I will say, compared to the original animation of where this essay is taken from, it is a little bit hard to knock them for going the direction that they did, because of course in that scene, at least the first 2 sections of it are basically what the essay has in it. It is Rosé charging up a black Kamehameha, his mouth is moving, he's not moving, and then it's him charging it from a back angle, and then they cut to Zamasu grabbing Goku and Trunks. I will say, that part of the essay as well is really stinky. I know that Dokkan still has a lot of ways to go with their sprite work, but they could have done a way better animation for Zamasu grabbing them. Obviously, you're grabbing one character instead of two, but they still could have done a close-up of his arm wrapping around the character's neck and then zooming out to Zamasu grabbing the sprite, because they're not afraid to do other characters' animations grabbing sprites. They did that with Ultimate Gohan. And then the explosion at the end, right, is also just kind of lackluster. In the anime, it's nice and close up to your face, and you have this beautiful shot of Rose's hair flowing as he's still standing in the Kamehameha pose. The city in the background is also, or in the foreground, I suppose in this case, in Dokkan's essay, is also something that's not present in the animation. I would have loved to see Rose's hair flow in that Dokkan style. Even when the Kamehameha is being launched initially, there's a lot more dynamic angles in the original animation. A nice close-up on Rose's face going out to the blast from a little bit more of a dynamic angle than just a straight on, and then it actually shows the blast flying forward at a little bit of a different angle than Dokkan's until it zooms in on the characters' faces and it goes boom. Obviously they can't really zoom in on the characters' faces here because of course, well, the sprites are awful. But nonetheless, this essay just really makes me desire more, bro. Like, the rest of the essays in his animations are pretty good, in my opinion. Some of the explosion effects in them, some of the smoke effects in them, so on and so forth, even the look of the scythe looks pretty cool. Even though there are some things that they definitely could have made a little bit more articulated in his overall animations, and they could have gave them a little bit more movement, they're definitely not bad for where Dokkan was at the time. And again, I know I keep saying that Gogeta literally just came out before this, but it does seem to me that Rose's essay was likely made before Gogeta. It's kind of the only way that I can justify in my head why it kind of ended up this way after coming out after one of the best essays in the game. So, yeah, I think that genuinely the 12 key is just, you know, not that interesting. If I really had to say one in this whole list was bad, I would probably pick this one. Hopefully, in the future, we won't get any more like this. Of course, by this point, even the unfeatured units, or rather the, you know, cards that become unfeatured that are the unfeatured unit that are featured on a new Dokkan Fest banner, wow, that was a mouthful, even get some really clean animations. And I would argue some of them even look better than some of these earlier 2020 units, with, you know, a little bit of exceptions depending on the unit, of course. But that is gonna do it for the top 5 worst essays of this year. But that is gonna do it for the top 5 worst essays of this year. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I genuinely don't think that any of these essays are necessarily bad. Even Rose's isn't terrible. I just think that these are probably the worst 5 out of the bunch, at least in my opinion. And I'm actually really happy to kind of have struggled with this video, because it means that Dokkan has been doing a really good job with these animations. And even compared to other gacha games that I've seen, even compared to other gacha games that I've played, Dokkan has some very, very nice animations. So I hope they continue this trend going forward. It'll be interesting to see what we consider the worst animations of 2020. I hope that going forward they will only go up in quality. We won't have any more Rose 12 key repeats, but we'll have to see. With that though, hope you guys enjoyed. Definitely let me know in the comments section below what your least favorite or worst essays of this year were. As well, I do have a Patreon. I make all kinds of different Dokkan content, and as well make figure videos. So if you would like to support me on there, go the extra mile and give your boy a little bit of extra support, I would greatly appreciate it. Please don't feel pressured though. Obviously, everybody needs a little bit of extra dough in their pocket right now. With that being said, though, I hope you guys have a very happy new year. Here's to a fantastic 2021, not just overall, but for our upcoming essays of the year. Thank you guys so much for watching. Dokkan Assets out. Peace.